It began with a little girl sitting alone beside a blue
It's all right,
suitcase,
sweetie. Don't worry
silent,
about the dog.
trembling,
He's just looking
and
for his
watched by
toys.
14 police dogs who
Are you
sensed a truth
traveling
no
alone
human could
today?
hear. Her stuffed bear, worn and innocent, pulsed with a hidden signal that made every trained K9 freeze as if heaven itself whispered a warning. Rowan Maddox, a quiet ex-Marine with
Don't
storm-colored
worry, he's a
eyes,
friendly
stepped
dog.
forward as Ridge pressed against his leg, bracing
your
for
bear's
danger
name?
that moved like a shadow in the crowd. Retrieval agents in gray coats entered the terminal, faces carved from stone, walking with the cold certainty of men who hunt without mercy. And when the bear flickered with life, the dogs closed in around the child, forming a living wall of protection no enemy could break. Because Ellie wasn't just lost. She was the key to a secret her father died trying to protect. One that called to her through fear, silence, and something far beyond human understanding. Before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you watching from today? And if you believe in God's protection over the innocent, like and subscribe to the channel. Rowan Maddox woke before the alarm out of habit more than need. The kind of half-startled waking that never really left men who'd learned to sleep light in places where shadows had teeth. For a moment he lay still in the dark bedroom of his small mountain house, listening. No artillery, no helicopter rotors, no distant shouts cutting through sand and wind. Just the soft sigh of the old heater, the whisper of pine branches sliding against the roof, and the steady, familiar weight of the world not trying to kill him. Then he heard the quiet thump-thump of paws outside the bedroom door, and the low huff of breath that meant a German shepherd was politely reminding him the sun would not wait. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, joints protesting, and rubbed his face. In the hallway light, his reflection in the cracked mirror by the dresser looked older than 38. Dark hair cut short out of habit, flecked with a few early streaks of gray at the temples. Jaw shadowed in rough stubble that never quite softened the hard lines around his mouth. Eyes that had once been a sharp, bright blue, and now held the muted color of storm clouds over the ocean. There were no scars on his face, which somehow made it worse. All the damage was behind his eyes, tucked neatly under a quiet voice and a way of standing slightly sideways to crowds. When he opened the bedroom door, Ridge was sitting there like he always did, perfectly still, tail resting on the floor, golden brown eyes already awake and waiting. Ridge was 4 years old now, a German shepherd with a sable black and gray coat that flowed in bands from dark along his back to lighter along his flanks, as if someone had brushed smoke over snow. His chest carried a brighter patch of fur that caught the light when he moved, a crooked shape that made Rowan think of a bent arrow pointing forward. Ridge's ears were upright, listening for things Rowan never heard, and his eyes had that unnerving, patient intelligence that made it hard to call him just a dog. "Morning, partner," Rowan muttered, reaching down to scratch the thick fur behind one ear. Ridge leaned into the touch, then stepped back, giving a little huff that sounded a lot like enough sentiment were on schedule. He trotted ahead down the short hallway, claws clicking softly against the wood, and Rowan followed. The house was small, kitchen, living room, one bedroom, but it was his. No barracks, no shared bunks, no alarms. Just a coffee pot, older than some Marines he'd once trained, and a view of the Cedar Run Valley that made the world seem, on most days, worth the trouble. While the coffee brewed, Ridge performed his ritual. 3 slow circuits around the wraparound porch outside, nose hovering at railing height, sampling the morning air like it was a report. Rowan had watched him do it every day for years. It comforted him, in a way he did not admit aloud, that something else in the house was still on patrol. The first light of dawn bled orange and pink across the sky laying long shadows over the pines and the old truck in the driveway. Rowan stood by the kitchen window with his mug, watching Ridge complete his third lap and pause at the top of the porch steps. Head lifted toward the distant valley where the town and the small airport sat like a toy in the bowl of the hills. The dog's body went still for a heartbeat, poised in a way Rowan recognized, the kind of stillness Marines had before someone called contact left. Then Ridge shook once, as if throwing off the thought, and came trotting back in. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the dog had just heard a squirrel curse him from a tree. Or maybe a small, unwelcome part of Rowan's brain whispered, "He heard the future coming and hasn't decided whether to warn you yet." His phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen, Travis Hale, pulled a faint, reluctant smile to his lips. Travis was one of the few people who had known Rowan both before and after the Corps, and somehow liked him in both versions. They'd met when Rowan was still active duty, working a joint exercise where K-9 units and Marines had to pretend they liked sharing terrain. Travis had been the one with sharp hazel eyes, a too big laugh, and a serious streak that only came out when he was talking to his dogs. Rowan answered, tucking the phone between ear and shoulder as he poured coffee into a battered travel mug. "You know it's early, right?" he said. "Early?" Travis's voice crackled down the line, bright and amused. "Maddox, this is brunch for people who still work for a living." In the background, there were faint barks and the echo of loudspeakers. "You still claim you've retired if you get up before the sun?" "I retired from being yelled at by people in uniform," Rowan said, picking up Ridge's black harness from the hook by the door. It was plain, no patches, just strong webbing and metal buckles that glinted in the light. "You don't count. You're a bad influence with a badge." "Flattered," Travis answered. Then his tone shifted, smoothing out. "Listen, you remember I told you today's the big joint drill at Cedar Run? TSA, city police, county sheriff, the whole circus?" "Yeah. 14 dogs, one over-caffeinated handler, and a bunch of officers who think the dogs do all the work." "Exactly that," Travis said, and Rowan could hear the grin. "I want you down here. Bring Ridge. Let him walk the course, see how he runs with the pack. Call it continuing education for both of you." He hesitated just a fraction. "And, between us, it's nice having someone around who actually watches the room and not just the checklist." Rowan knew what that meant. Travis trusted his eyes in a way most civilians didn't. Years of scanning rooftops and alleys had left him with a habit of reading spaces like he used to read maps, where people clustered, where tension sat, where trouble would come from if it had any sense of drama. "You're short on paranoia this morning?" Rowan asked. "Always," Travis said lightly, but there was a thread of truth there. "Come on. You can drink terrible airport coffee, complain about the new recruits, and pretend you're not doing security work for free." Ridge, who had been watching the conversation with his head cocked, gave a sharp, hopeful wag of his tail at the word airport. Rowan sighed, the kind of sigh that already knew it was going to lose the argument. "Fine," he said. "But if you're fancy K-9's bully Ridge, we're leaving." "Deal," Travis replied. "You've got about 40 minutes before we run the first formation. I'll meet you by the south training field." When the call ended, Rowan slid the harness over Ridge's head. The dog stepped into it automatically, the motion smooth and practiced. Rowan tightened the straps, feeling the solid muscle under the fur, the heartbeat thudding steadily against his fingers. "Field trip," he murmured. "Try not to embarrass me in front of the professionals." Ridge's response was to lick his wrist once, then stride for the door like he had an appointment with destiny. The drive down from the ridge took them along a winding road, lined with winter bare trees and scattered farmhouses. The town of Cedar Run appeared in stages. First the water tower, then the cluster of brick buildings, then the low sprawl of the small regional airport beyond. Traffic was light. It was the kind of morning where the world still believed nothing very interesting was going to happen. Rowan kept one hand on the steering wheel, and one elbow rested on the door, feeling the cool glass against his skin. Ridge sat in the back seat, nose close to the cracked window, ears flicking at sounds only he catalogued. Rowan's mind wandered where it always did when he was forced to be still. Back to sand-colored horizons, to radio chatter and the heavy taste of metal in his mouth after an explosion. To the faces of Marines he could name in his sleep and never see again. He'd come back from all that with a neat discharge paper, a chest full of ribbons in a box he rarely opened, and a vague instruction to reintegrate. No one had given him a manual for how to hold a coffee cup without scanning for exits. Ridge had been the closest thing to one. The dog had come into his life through a rescue program that paired retired or reassigned working dogs with veterans. Ridge hadn't stayed in the program long. He'd taken one look at Rowan, walked over, and set his head on the man's knee like he'd found the one human whose broken pieces matched his own. Rowan hadn't argued. By the time they pulled into the gravel lot near the south training field, the sun was fully up, bleaching the frost from the grass. The training area sat just beyond the main airport buildings, a wide rectangle of trimmed field marked with orange cones, wooden obstacles, and a few abandoned luggage carts pressed into service as props. A chain-link fence surrounded it, and beyond that, the glass facade of the terminal caught the morning light and threw it back in sheets. Inside the fence, chaos and discipline wove together in an odd dance. 14 dogs of varying sizes and colors moved in loose arcs around their handlers. Shepherds with black and tan coats that gleamed in the sun. Lean Belgian Malinois whose every step looked like a coiled spring. One striking white German shepherd whose fur shone like frost. The handlers, men and women in airport police uniforms, Sheriff's Department browns and TSA blues, called out commands, their voices firm but threaded with affection. Travis Hale stood near the center of it all, clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other. He was in his late 30s, a few years younger than Rowan, with sandy brown hair kept regulation short and a face that was more lines than softness. His hazel eyes were quick and assessing, but the deep grooves at the corners were from smiling, not frowning. He wore a dark Navy K9 unit jacket with a badge over the heart and a patch of a shepherd's head on the sleeve. When he saw Rowan, his mouth pulled into a wide grin that made him look almost boyish. "You actually came," he called, walking over. "And you brought the legend." "Careful," Rowan said. "If you call him that to his face, he won't fit through the door later." Travis bent to greet Ridge properly, palm open, letting the dog sniff his hand before scratching under the jaw. "Ridge, you magnificent weirdo," he said. "You ready to meet the cool kids?" Ridge accepted the affection with dignified tolerance, then looked past Travis at the field, ears perking. His nostrils flared as the scents of 14 other working dogs reached him. Dominance, nervous energy, eagerness, old scars, and young mistakes. Rowan watched his posture shift. Not submissive, not confrontational, just alert, weighing. Travis straightened and gestured toward the field. "Come on, I'll introduce you before we start. That way, if they try to form a union and stage a walkout, you can mediate." They moved along the fence as Travis pointed out dogs and handlers. "That's Rex," he said. nodding toward a large, dark German shepherd sitting perfectly at heel, next to a tall black officer with a shaved head and a calm weightlifter's build. Rex is 5. Explosive detection. Thinks in checklists, never breaks formation. His handler's Officer Jamal Brooks. Quiet, but his last deployment in the Army left him with a deep hate for sloppy work. They're basically the same person in 2 bodies. A few yards away, a white shepherd lay sphinx-like, watching everything with pale golden eyes. Ghost, Travis said. Old man of the group. 8 years, retired from a bigger city unit, now semi-retired here. He does people's searches and emotional support on the side. If you cry near him, he will put his head on your lap. It's in the bylaws. Rowan's gaze moved on to a stocky Malinois tugging enthusiastically on a chew toy, held by a laughing female deputy with freckles and a tight auburn bun. That's Bunker, Travis continued. 4.5, loves to hit hard things with his face. Bomb detection and apprehension. His handler, Deputy Carla Ruiz, stubborn as he is. She took a piece of shrapnel during a domestic call a few years back and refused to leave the job. Now they both pretend they're made of cement. Near one of the wooden obstacles, a slightly smaller shepherd with bright eyes and an almost puppyish bounce danced around a shorter male handler in TSA blue. Scout, Travis said fondly. Youngest 2 years. Hyper nose, hyper everything. Handler's Evan Cho. First assignment, still learning not to apologize to every suitcase he sniffs. There were others. Nova, a sleek female shepherd with a dark saddle of fur and calm eyes, who stuck close to a middle-aged woman with streaks of gray in her braid. Milo, lean and almost wolfish, pacing an invisible perimeter. Ember, whose reddish tint in her coat justified her name. Tank, a blocky Malinois who looked like he'd happily run through a wall if asked nicely. Diesel, Kilo, Bear, Luna, Arrow, Hera, each with a quick sketch from Travis, enough that Rowan could start to tell them apart not just by fur, but by the way they moved, the way their handlers relaxed or tensed at their side. As they walked, Rowan felt a strange warmth settle under his ribs. This wasn't a platoon, not exactly. The stakes were different, the uniforms a patchwork instead of matching camouflage. But the rhythm was the same. The murmur of orders, the shared jokes, the way people stood a little looser because someone, or something, had their back. He hadn't realized how much he missed that background hum of purpose until he heard it again. They were midway down the line when it happened. One moment, the field was a collage of controlled motion. Dogs trotting, handlers calling out, sit and heel. Travis rattling off another story about how Bear had once stolen a full hot dog from the sheriff at a county fair. The next, Ridge stopped walking. Not slowed, stopped. His whole body went from casual to carved from stone in a heartbeat, head up, ears locked toward the distant glass of the terminal building. His tail hung straight, not wagging, not tucked, just pointing down like an exclamation mark at the earth. Rowan felt the leash go tight in his hand and followed Ridge's gaze. The terminal was just glass and steel in the morning sun, people moving behind it like an ant farm. Tiny figures with rolling suitcases and paper cups. Nothing that screamed danger. No one running. No alarms. Just an ordinary morning in an ordinary airport that didn't know it was being watched. What made Rowan's skin pebble wasn't Ridge alone. It was what happened next. Across the field, Rex, who had been sitting like a statue beside Officer Brooks, turned his head in the exact same direction, ears pricking. Ghost's pale eyes narrowed, his nose lifting fractionally. Scout, mid-bounce, froze with one paw in the air, stare pulled toward the glass. Nova's muscles tightened under her handler's hand. One by one, like a ripple moving through tall grass, 14 dogs shifted their focus away from the drills, away from the shouted commands, and toward the same invisible point. None of the humans had heard anything, but the dogs clearly had. Or maybe, Rowan thought with a chill he couldn't explain, they'd heard something that hadn't happened yet. "What are they looking at?" Travis asked, his voice a notch lower, the humor erased. Rowan studied the terminal. On the far left, a mother hoisted a toddler onto her hip. Near the center, a janitor pushed a yellow mop bucket. To the right, a small figure in a pink jacket stood near a row of blue seats, almost swallowed by the space around her. Even at this distance, something about the way she stood, too still, shoulders tight, a stuffed toy clutched hard against her chest, made his gut tighten. "I don't know yet," he said quietly. "But whatever it is, they all agree it's there." Travis looked from the line of dogs to the glass, frown deepening. "We're still 20 minutes from VIP movement. This is supposed to be the safe part of the morning." "Yeah," Rowan replied, fingers tightening slightly on Ridge's leash as the shepherd leaned forward, muscles humming with a readiness that had nothing to do with obstacle courses. "Funny thing about safe parts of the morning, they never ask the dog's opinion." As sun spilled brighter across the field and the loudspeaker crackled with some routine boarding call, 15 canine silhouettes stood in quiet alignment, listening to something no one else could hear. Somewhere beyond the glass, near Gate 7, a little girl in a pink jacket held onto her stuffed toy like a life raft. And the day began, very softly to tilt. Rowan Maddox had been inside enough terminals to know their usual rhythm. Rolling suitcases rattling like loose percussion, announcements buzzing in the speakers with the same bored cadence, families clustering, businessmen pacing, children crying because that was their job in public spaces. But near Gate 7, the energy shifted. He felt it first in the way Ridge slowed, not stopping, just easing his pace as though stepping into colder air. Then he saw why. The crowd parted naturally around a small blue suitcase, too large for the child sitting beside it. The girl couldn't have been older than 5. Wispy blonde hair fell across her face, and her pale pink jacket looked a size too thin for the draft under the terminal's air vents. She wasn't crying or calling for anyone. She simply held a gray stuffed bear against her chest so tightly her knuckles gleamed white, where the blood fled her fingers. People passed, glancing once before turning away, the unspoken rule of public spaces holding, someone else will intervene. Someone else will notice. Someone else will ask. But dogs always noticed first. Scout was the first of the canine unit to falter. The young German shepherd was usually a chaotic ribbon of energy at the end of Evan Cho's leash. Bouncy, eager, always trying to nose into every bag as if the world were one giant sniffing buffet. But the instant they stepped into the Gate 7 concourse, Scout locked up, nose lifted, tail stiff. Evan nearly stumbled from the sudden halt. "What is it, Bud?" Evan whispered, confusion wrinkling his youthful features. Nova, calm and steady as ever, slowed as well, her handler's arm tugging her along out of habit rather than intent. Ghost, napping in that old sage way of his, opened his pale golden eyes. Not abruptly, but with the quiet deliberation of someone awakening only when the world truly needed him. His ears angled toward the girl. Then Ridge crossed the threshold of the concourse, and every hair along his spine rose. Rowan felt it before he saw it. The leash tightening, Ridge's body going from relaxed to braced, weight shifting forward as if preparing to stand between Rowan and a muzzle flash. Ridge stepped sideways and planted himself directly in front of Rowan, blocking his path with silent insistence. "What is it, boy?" Rowan murmured, but the answer was already forming in his gut. Ridge didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply stared at the girl. The world dimmed around the edges, just slightly, like a scene tightening its focus. Rowan followed Ridge's gaze and saw the child properly for the first time. The too still posture, the distant stare that didn't belong on a 5-year-old, the absence of tears, not a sign of calm, but of something Rowan recognized from dusty villages half a world away. Not crying was a survival skill. So was silence. His heartbeat thumped once, hard. The other dogs began reacting next, swift and eerie enough that several passengers froze, mid-step. Rex deviated from his formation, pulling Officer Brooks with a force that made the muscular handler shift his stance. Milo skirted wide to the perimeter of the concourse, nostrils flaring as if trying to catch a scent that kept slipping away. Nova circled to the girl's blind spot with quiet intent. Bear moved with lumbering softness until he blocked the main path beside the suitcase. In seconds, Sentinel 14 spread like a silent ripple, as if 15 instincts were tuned to the same invisible frequency. Murmurs rose. Phones appeared. Someone whispered, "Are they doing a search? Did something happen?" Rowan ignored the spectators. He approached slowly, Ridge at his side, the shepherd's body taut as wire. When Rowan knelt, he let his voice fall to the soft register he'd used with frightened civilians overseas. "Hey, kiddo, you waiting for someone?" The girl's eyes lifted, blue, wide, quietly broken. "My name's Rowan," he added, "and this here is Ridge. He's kind of the boss between the two of us." Her gaze flicked to Ridge, then back. "I'm Ellie," she whispered, voice brittle like thin ice. "That's a good name." Rowan nodded toward the bear. "And your friend here?" Ellie looked down at the toy but didn't answer. Instead, she squeezed it tighter, shoulders inching up as though preparing for a blow. "Are you lost, Ellie?" She shook her head. "You waiting for your mom or dad?" A pause, too long for a simple question. Ellie swallowed. "Daddy said, if I ever get scared, I should hold my bear real tight." "That sounds like good advice," Rowan said gently. "And your mom?" Her eyes darted away. She didn't blink. She didn't answer. She simply tightened her grip until the bear's seams creaked. Rowan's stomach twisted. He recognized that gesture too. Ridge stepped closer, nose lowering to sniff the bear, not rudely, but with the precise, respectful focus of a working dog diagnosing danger. His breathing shifted, nostrils fluttering. Then Ridge recoiled half an inch, not retreating, resetting. A low whine vibrated in his throat, the kind he almost never used. "Easy," Rowan murmured. But Ridge wasn't afraid. He was warning. And that's when the rehook hit. Across the concourse, near Gate 8, where people were sipping coffee and waiting for boarding, 3 of the farthest dogs, Ember, Hera, and Arrow, stopped whatever they were doing. None of them had been close enough to smell Ellie or the bear. None had visual contact through the crowd. Yet all 3 turned their heads toward Ellie in the same second. Not barking, not growling, just staring, intently, unwaveringly, like they were hearing a sound no human could detect. A single pulse of instinct. Rowan felt the air shift, subtle and cold, as though something unseen had just stepped into the room. Travis Hale jogged over, breath warm in the chilled terminal air. "Rowan, what's going on? Half my dogs just..." "Whoa." He stopped short when he saw Ellie. "Kiddo's alone?" "Yeah." Rowan kept his eyes on the girl. "And the dogs aren't reacting to her. They're reacting to that." He nodded at the bear. Travis crouched beside him. He wasn't a large man. but the lines in his face deepened with focus, stripping away the humor he wore like a protective shell. "You think it's—" Rowan shook his head. "I don't know yet." Travis leaned in slightly, but stopped a safe distance away. "Ellie, sweetheart, where are your parents?" She didn't answer. She stared straight ahead, past him, past Rowan, as though watching something awful only she could see. Behind them, passengers were whispering louder now. They're surrounding her. "Should we move? Is that girl dangerous?" The absurdity of the question made Rowan's jaw flex. A 5-year-old wasn't dangerous. But what she carried might be, or what carried her. Ridge whined again, softer this time, then placed one paw forward with exquisite delicacy, seeking permission to approach further. "Okay, partner," Rowan murmured. "Go slow." Ridge leaned in, nose brushing the bear's matted fur, and froze. His muscles hardened, breath halting. His body radiated a tension so sharp it might have cut glass. Then he stepped back and pressed himself firmly against Rowan's leg, protective posture, the kind he used only when danger was both immediate and invisible. That was all it took. Rex barked once across the concourse, a single sharp command bark that snapped every handler's head upright. The entire Sentinel-14 tightened formation around the perimeter, not closing in on Ellie, but guarding her, defending her. The shimmering silence that followed felt like the deep inhale before a thunderclap. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Rowan lifted Ellie's bear gently. "Ellie, did someone give this to you today?" Her lower lip trembled. "My daddy," she whispered, "before he went away." "Where's your daddy now?" "He said he'd come back." She blinked hard. He said not to talk to the men in the coats." A chill licked up Rowan's spine. "What men, Ellie?" She shook her head fast, too fast. Ridge nudged Rowan's hand urgently with his nose, gaze fixed on the bear like it was breathing. Then the dog let out a low, rumbling growl that made the nearest passengers recoil. Not a threat, a signal. And suddenly, Rowan understood. Something inside the bear wasn't just wrong. Something inside the bear was alive in a way only dogs could sense. Electronic pulse, chemical trace, or something darker that wasn't physical at all. The chapter closes here. A widening circle of tension, 15 dogs listening to the same silent alarm. A 5-year-old girl gripping her bear like it was her lifeline. And Rowan realizing this wasn't an accident or lost child situation. It was the beginning of something far more deliberate. The moment Ridge pressed himself against Rowan's leg, the concourse around Gate 7 seemed to shrink, sound thinning until every breath felt magnified. Rowan kept his hand steady on the dog's harness, even as tension rippled through Sentinel-14 like a silent electrical surge. To most passengers, it looked like a training drill gone strange. But to anyone used to animals or danger, it was something else entirely. Dogs didn't lie. Dogs didn't hesitate. Dogs didn't react in synchronized fear unless something was deeply wrong. Ellie still sat beside her oversized blue suitcase, her thin shoulders curled protectively inward, the gray stuffed bear pinned to her chest like a shield. She blinked slowly, dazed but obediently silent, as if some internal rule book told her not to do more than exist exactly where she was placed. "Rowan," Travis murmured, stepping beside him. "I've only seen a reaction like this twice. Once during a chemical leak in Chicago, and once when an officer brought a device into training by accident." His jaw tightened. This feels worse. Rowan didn't answer. He crouched again, lowering himself to Ellie's eye level. Ridge mirrored him, lowering his head but keeping his body angled protectively. Rowan's voice softened into that low, quiet tone soldiers used when trying not to spook a detonator. Ellie, he said gently, I need to see your teddy bear. Just for a second. She didn't shake her head. She didn't speak. She simply pulled the bear a fraction closer, like muscle memory overriding logic. Her tiny fingers trembled. The bear, Rowan realized, wasn't soft the way a beloved toy should be. Its torso sagged stiffly, almost weighted. The stitching along one seam near the left side bulged unnaturally. Before he could speak again, 2 TSA officers hurried over, faces tight, hands hovering near radios. The taller of the two, a middle-aged man with thinning brown hair and an anxious mustache, cleared his throat. Sir, we're getting crowd complaints. Is this part of your drill? His voice carried the tone of a man who often found himself asking questions he didn't want answers to. No, Travis said sharply, and no one moves closer. The officer swallowed, stepping back. Rowan barely registered him. His focus stayed on Ellie. Sweetheart, Rowan whispered, your bear. Did Daddy give it to you a long time ago? Or recently? Her lips parted. One word escaped. Yesterday. Rowan's pulse thudded. If the bear had been tampered with, yesterday meant the danger was fresh. Ridge let out a barely audible growl. And then it happened. Ghost, who had been lying 20 feet away, suddenly rose, not with the slow dignity of old age, but with the sharp, fierce precision of a dog seeing a ghost. His pale golden eyes locked onto Ellie, or more accurately, onto the bear in her arms. His chest rumbled. But here was the strange part. He didn't move toward her. He stepped back. A single step. Ghost, the dog who comforted crying children and faced down collapsed buildings without hesitation, was retreating from a stuffed toy. A shepherd retreating was the loudest silence in the world. Across the concourse, Bear, solid, gentle Bear, whimpered, ears folding back as though something unseen had brushed past him. Even Tank, who feared nothing, stiffened and glanced toward the corridor leading to the bathrooms as if expecting movement. The air changed temperature. Something was wrong with the bear. Terribly wrong. Passengers were watching now, not with curiosity, but with the rising tension of people who sense danger without understanding it. A mother pulled her toddler behind her. A businessman halted mid-step, clutching his laptop bag as though instinct told him to use it as a shield. Travis exhaled slowly. Rowan, we need protocol. Protocol is don't touch anything until we know what it is, Rowan replied, eyes narrowing. And right now, the dogs are telling us this isn't a drill, and it sure as hell isn't nothing. Agreed. Travis stepped back and lifted his radio. Dispatch, this is Hale at Gate 7. I need bomb squad standby, quiet code, no announcement yet, and send Lieutenant Ingrid Pierce. Within seconds, the overhead lights shifted subtly as security tightened around the perimeter. Lieutenant Ingrid Pierce arrived fast. Faster than someone wearing dress shoes should be able to move. She was in her mid-40s, tall and lean with angular features and steel gray hair pulled into a strict braid that made her sharp cheekbones even sharper. Her uniform, the dark navy of Airport Security Command, fit her like a blade in a sheath. She had the posture of someone who'd spent years in the Army before switching to airport policing. Her voice, when she spoke, carried both power and restraint. What's the situation? Travis gestured toward Ellie in the semicircle of tense dogs. Potential hazardous object. The dogs reacted before any sensors. Ingrid's dark eyes softened when she turned to Ellie. Is she hurt? No, Rowan answered. But she's scared. And something on her, or with her, is setting the dogs off. Ingrid approached slowly, lowering herself to one knee. Her eyes crinkled with gentleness that contrasted sharply with her stern face. Sweetheart, My name is Ingrid. Are you waiting for someone? Ellie looked at her, but said nothing. Her gaze darted between Ingrid's face and the bear, as if waiting for permission to breathe. Ingrid leaned subtly toward Rowan. You think it's inside the bear? I think Ridge thinks it's inside the bear, Rowan answered. Ingrid studied Ridge, his bristled posture, his unblinking stare. Then I trust him. What's your call? I want to get that bear out of her arms without scaring her into squeezing it, Rowan said. Ingrid nodded. I'll clear the immediate area. She issued crisp orders. Officers backed the hovering crowd a few meters away, making a shield of bodies without panic. Dogs maintained the perimeter with unsettling calm. Then Rowan turned back to Ellie. Ellie, he said softly, can I hold your bear for just a second? I promise I'll give it back. I just want to keep you safe. She hesitated. Her small fingers twitched. The bear's head tilted slightly in her grip, revealing a faint line of stitching Rowan hadn't noticed before. Too straight, too new, almost surgical. Ridge let out a sharp breath. Ellie swallowed, then whispered the smallest confession. Daddy said not to open it. Rowan felt the words hit him like a shove. Not to open it meant Daddy knew something was inside, which meant he didn't give her a comfort toy. He gave her a warning. Okay, Rowan murmured. Then we won't open it. But I need to hold it just for a moment. With trembling hands, Ellie slowly extended the bear. Rowan accepted it gently, treating it like unexploded ordnance. The weight in his palms was wrong, too heavy for cotton stuffing. A metallic core pressed faintly against the inner seam. Ridge stepped forward, sniffing once, then backing up immediately, tail stiff, the strongest confirmation yet. Ingrid leaned in. Rowan, what do you feel? He whispered. A device. Something metallic. No ticking. No heat. But it's not a toy. Ellie clutched the suitcase and whispered, Daddy said to stay quiet until he comes back. Rowan's chest tightened. Ellie. Where is Daddy now? She shook her head. Her eyes filled with something more than fear, something like betrayal or loss too heavy for a 5-year-old. He didn't get on the plane. Ingrid's breath hitched. Rowan, that suitcase, look. The blue suitcase had a tag, but the name wasn't Ellie's. It wasn't a child's at all. It belonged to a man who never boarded, a man who never checked out. Rowan exhaled. This isn't a lost child situation. This is a handoff. Ingrid nodded grimly. A handoff to someone, or a drop-off of something. Ridge stood at full attention, chest expanding, eyes locked on the bear. Then, for the first time all morning, Ridge barked. One single bark, sharp, urgent, unmistakable. The signal that everything was about to escalate. And that nothing about this situation was accidental. Lieutenant Ingrid Pierce stood perfectly still as Rowan held the stuffed bear in both hands, as though any unnecessary breath might trigger whatever hid inside its seams. Around them, Sentinel 14 maintained a semicircle that looked casual to the untrained eye, but was in fact a precise, living formation of defense. Every dog facing outward, every chest low, every ear raised. Ridge remained closest, pressed against Rowan's hip, tail straight as a steel rod. His heartbeat, though steady, vibrated with an alertness Rowan recognized from the battlefield. Something about this bear was wrong, dangerously wrong. Ingrid turned toward the blue suitcase Ellie sat beside. The luggage tag hung sideways from the handle, its edges frayed. She bent, lifting it carefully with gloved hands. The name on the tag read, Nathaniel Cross. Not Ellie, not a child. The handwriting underneath the printed text, written in faded black ink, read, Terminal 2, Boarding Group A. A flight number had been scribbled, then scratched out, a second number written above it. Ingrid's brows furrowed. He changed flights at the last minute. Rowan exhaled, or someone did it for him. Ingrid scanned the concourse. Where's the mother? No sign, Travis answered, tightening his grip on Rex's leash. No one's approached Ellie since we started watching her. She said Daddy didn't get on the plane, Rowan added, which means someone may have intercepted him before he did. Ingrid's jaw tightened. So, either Nathaniel Cross left this child here intentionally, or someone left her as a distraction. Ellie hugged her knees, watching the adults with a hollow kind of fear that had no tears left. Ridge softened slightly, leaning toward the girl and pressing his nose gently against her arm. She flinched at first. Then her small hand found the courage to stroke the dog's ear. It was the first voluntary movement she'd made that wasn't fear-driven. Ingrid knelt in front of her. Ellie, honey, what does your daddy look like? Can you tell me? Ellie bit her lip. Her eyes flicked from Ingrid to Rowan, unsure. Rowan gave an encouraging nod. Ellie whispered, he's tall. He wears glasses when he reads. He has a beard sometimes, but he shaved yesterday. Daddy said we were just going on a short trip. Did anyone talk to him before you got here? Rowan asked gently. Ellie's fingers curled into her sleeves. Men in dark jackets. They said they needed him. Daddy said he'd be right back. She swallowed hard, but he didn't come back. Rowan exchanged a grim look with Ingrid. If men in uniform jackets approached passengers claiming urgent business, most civilians wouldn't question authority, especially if they looked official enough. Ingrid stood. We need the manifest. Travis raised his radio. Dispatch, run a search for Nathaniel Cross. Find out whether he checked in, went through security, or... But Ridge cut him off. The shepherd's head snapped upward, eyes locked on the wide concourse doors leading toward the security checkpoint. His nostrils flared once, twice. A deep, low growl rippled from his chest, vibrating through the tile floor. And then 3 other dogs joined him. Ghost, Tank, Milo. Their growls harmonized like distant thunder. Something had entered the building. The concourse doors slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss, letting in a flood of colder outside air. At first it seemed like nothing unusual, just more passengers. But the dogs didn't growl at crowds, they growled at threats. And Rowan saw it. A man stepping through the metal detectors, tall, wearing a dark brown coat with a collar turned up high. His movements were calm, too calm. Like someone walking into a room they already controlled. His hair was salt and pepper, neatly trimmed, and he carried no luggage. His face would have blended anywhere except for one detail, his eyes. Ice gray, sharp, scanning like a predator assessing the pack before choosing which flank to break. The moment the man saw Ellie, he stopped walking and smiled. Not kindly, not warmly, but knowingly. Ghost let out a snarl, an old dog recognizing evil like an old soldier recognizing gunfire. Ridge's hackles rose so sharply they bristled like quills. Rex lunged forward with a fierce bark, dragging Officer Brooks 2 steps before Brooks forced him back. Ellie whimpered. That's one of them. The man in the coat lifted one hand in a calm, placating gesture, then quietly stepped behind a family of 3, using them as a partial shield. Every dog's body turned rigid. The threat wasn't coming. It was already here. Ingrid's posture changed instantly. Her shoulders squared, her hand drifting toward the weapon holstered at her right hip. But she didn't draw it. not yet. She knew, as Rowan did, that drawing too soon in a crowded terminal could spiral into chaos. "Rowan," she said quietly, "circle the girl. Travis, take left flank. I'll intercept." Rowan moved fast, scooping Ellie into his arms. She clung to his jacket instinctively, burying her face in the crook of his shoulder. Ridge pressed tight beside them, guiding rather than following. The bear remained in Rowan's left hand, its weight a constant reminder of the danger radiating from its hidden core. The man in the coat shifted sideways, weaving through commuters with casual finesse. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He acted like someone who expected to walk out untouched. His gaze flicked from Ellie to the bear in Rowan's hand. And something tightened in his expression, a faint crease at the corner of his eyes, like he had expected the bear to still be with the child. "Sir," Ingrid said sharply as she approached him, her voice firm but controlled. "I need you to stop there." The man paused. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Is there a problem, officer?" "Yes," Ingrid said, evenly. "We've had an alert in this area. I'm going to need you to step aside for a quick check." The man shrugged. "Of course." His compliance was too easy. Rowan saw it. Travis saw it. The dogs saw it. The man's eyes slid sideways, calculating exits. Rowan's instincts screamed louder than the alarms that had not yet sounded. Something about the man didn't match the fear Ellie held. The kind of fear that lingers for days, not minutes. This wasn't a stranger she'd seen once. This was someone she recognized on a deeper, older level of terror. Ghost crept forward, teeth bared but silent. Ridge's body snapped tighter, moving into a stance Rowan rarely saw him take outside the worst moments of deployment. Ready to shield, ready to leap, ready to die if needed. Ingrid stepped closer. "Sir, arms out." The man spread his hands casually. And in that moment, Rowan noticed something that sent cold fire down his spine. The man wore no wedding ring, no ID badge, no watch. But a faint imprint around his wrist suggested he had removed something tightly strapped there only moments prior, like a device, like a tracker, like a detonator. Rowan whispered, "Ingrid, back off." But it was too late. The man's smile widened. Not kind, not warm, not knowing, triumphant. He lowered his voice just enough so only Ingrid and the nearest dogs could hear him. "You shouldn't have taken the bear from her." Ridge barked once, sharp, explosive, warning everyone before Rowan's brain even processed the meaning. Ingrid's hand flew toward her holster. The man moved. The concourse erupted, and Chapter 4 ends here, at the tipping point where instinct, danger, and destiny collide in the space between one breath and the next. Chaos did not explode all at once. It arrived in a controlled shatter, like glass breaking in slow motion. Every shard sharp enough to kill if mishandled. As the man in the brown coat lunged, Ingrid Pierce shifted her weight with the reflex of someone who had broken noses in military combatives courses long before she became an airport lieutenant. She pulled Ellie behind a column while Rowan turned his body sideways, shielding the child with the practiced motion of a Marine who'd covered civilians from blast waves more than once. The man darted toward Rowan, his hands open and empty. But his movements were precise, not wild, not panicked. Too rehearsed for someone acting alone. Ridge snapped forward immediately, placing himself between Rowan and the attacker. Teeth bared, a deep, drilling growl vibrating through his chest. Rex and Tank lunged beside him, forming a wall of living muscle and instinct. The man froze mid-stride, seeing 3 trained K9s ready to tear him apart. Yet his expression didn't show fear. It showed calculation. His gaze darted toward Ellie, then toward the bear still clutched in Rowan's hand. "That doesn't belong to you." the man hissed, voice low and steady. "You have no idea what you're holding." Rowan shifted his grip on the bear, keeping it away from Ellie's reach. "Then maybe you should tell me." Instead of answering, the man retreated one step, then swept his jacket aside in a quick motion. Not a weapon. A badge. A federal badge. Except the insignia was all wrong. Not FBI, not Homeland, not ATF. The emblem was unfamiliar, circular, a stylized black hawk in the center with no agency name, only a number etched beneath, 47. Rowan felt the old combat instincts crawl up his spine. A badge without a name was worse than a weapon. It meant covert authorization. It meant deniability. "Step back," the man ordered Ingrid. "This is government business. Classified level 7. You have no authority here." Ingrid did not move. "Not until I confirm you're real. You won't find me in your system. That's the problem," she shot back. A pulse of anger shaped the man's jaw. "You're putting civilians in danger." "And you walked in without backup," Rowan countered, "which means you're lying." The man didn't deny it. His eyes flicked again to Ellie. That told Rowan everything he needed to know. She wasn't bait. She was leverage. Before Rowan could speak again, something happened that no one, human or canine, expected. Ghost, the oldest dog in Sentinel 14, stepped forward, shoulders stiff, tail lowered. His cloudy eyes locked onto Ellie with an intensity that made Rowan's breath hitch. The old shepherd sniffed the air once, twice, then, very slowly, walked past Ridge, past Rex, past the man in the coat. Ghost approached Ellie. Not the bear. Ellie. And the girl, who had been frozen with fear, suddenly relaxed. Her small shoulders dropped. Her breathing softened. She extended a trembling hand toward the old dog's muzzle. Ghost nudged her palm gently. And in that instant, every dog in Sentinel 14 lifted their ears in unison, like they had all received the same silent message at the same time. A message not about danger, but recognition. It wasn't the bear they were reacting to anymore. It was the child. Ellie wasn't just connected to danger. She was connected to the cause of it. A truth the dog sensed long before humans did. Rowan felt a cold sweep of realization. The dogs weren't protecting Ellie because she was a victim. They were protecting her because something inside her life was the key. The moment broke when the man in the coat lunged again. Not at Ellie, not at Rowan, but toward the column behind Ingrid. A diversion. Ridge leapt first, intercepting him mid-step with a deep bark that echoed off the concourse tiles. The man stumbled backward, falling into a row of chairs. Ingrid moved fast, grabbing his wrist and twisting with trained precision, forcing his arm up behind him. He didn't resist, not fully. But his voice rose with an edge of desperation. "You don't understand. That device, if you jostle it wrong." Rowan tightened his grip on the bear, holding it steady. "Then maybe start explaining." "It's not explosive," the man said, gasping as Ingrid drove her knee into his back. "It's a tracker." Rowan frowned. "For who?" "For the father," the man whispered. "Nathaniel Cross is compromised. That bear was the only way to trace who he met at the airport. It was meant to be carried, not seized." Ingrid snapped coldly. Why hide it inside a child's toy? Because no one checks a kid's bear. "And who are you, really?" Rowan demanded. The man hesitated, then spoke in a voice low enough only Rowan, Ingrid, and Ridge could hear. "My name is Adrian Locke, Section 47. We specialize in counter-covert intervention." Rowan narrowed his eyes. "That's not a real agency." Adrian smiled darkly. "Exactly." Travis approached, eyes darting between Adrian and the bear. If it's a tracker, why did the dogs react like it was a threat? Adrian's gaze hardened. Because it was broadcasting a signal when the child walked in. A signal for what? For retrieval units. Ingrid cursed under her breath. Meaning someone else is coming. Not someone, Adrian corrected. Several. Ellie whimpered at that word, retrieval, and buried her face against Rowan's jacket. Rowan felt her shaking. Without thinking, he wrapped his free arm around her shoulder. Hey, it's all right. I've got you. The dogs closed in tighter around them, 15 sets of paws shifting on polished tile, forming a shield that felt ancient in instinct. Adrian nodded at them. They'll stand between you and whatever's coming. Dogs always know the enemy before humans do. Ridge growled, sharply once, toward the security checkpoint. Then Titus, Bear, Milo, Ember, and Kilo all turned at the same time, their bodies stiffening. Something, or someone, was approaching the terminal. Rowan didn't need a weapon to feel the danger approaching like a rolling storm. What happens if those retrieval units reach the child? Rowan asked Adrian quietly. Adrian inhaled slowly, pressing his forehead against the floor as Ingrid kept his arm pinned. They won't hurt her, he said. Rowan stiffened. Then why take her? Adrian's jaw tightened. Because she's the only one Nathaniel Cross would die to protect, and they want him. Ellie's trembling intensified. Rowan felt her fingers dig into his shoulder, clinging like he was the only anchor she had left. Ingrid checked her earpiece. Terminal patrol reports multiple unidentified men entering from the west concourse. They're moving in a coordinated pattern. Adrian nodded grimly. Retrieval. Rowan steadied himself. So they're coming for Ellie? No, Adrian whispered. They're coming for the bear. Rowan looked at the stuffed toy again, heavy, still, silent. But now, awareness prickled beneath his skin. He could almost feel a pulse through the fur. Not mechanical, not electronic, something else. He glanced at Ridge. The dog stared back, pupils narrowed, tail rigid, not with fear, but readiness. Whatever was inside this bear, whatever it tracked, whatever Nathaniel Cross got involved with, it was coming closer. And Rowan, Ridge, and all 14 dogs would have to decide whether to run, fight, or uncover the truth trapped inside that sewn seam. The concourse lights flickered. The crowd noise dimmed. Footsteps echoed. Noise in the terminal fell into an unnatural hush, as if fear itself had pressed a finger over every mouth. Rowan held Ellie close, her small hands twisting into the fabric of his jacket, while the stuffed bear weighed in his other palm like a heart that wasn't beating but somehow still alive. Ridge braced against Rowan's leg, muscles tight, hackles sharp as wire. Sentinel 14 formed a living barricade around them, each dog locking into position with instinctual precision. Travis took a step toward Rowan, breath unsteady, his hand gripping Rex's collar as though grounding himself. How many units are coming? He asked Adrian Locke, who still lay pinned beneath Ingrid's knee. Adrian's jaw clenched. 3, maybe 4. They travel in pairs. 2 watch, 2 intercept. Armed? Ingrid demanded. Always. Ingrid didn't waste a second. Rowan, get Ellie to a secure room, now. Rowan nodded, shifting Ellie into a more stable hold. But the girl's eyes darted toward the concourse entrance. They'll see me, she whispered, voice trembling. Daddy said they always see me. Rowan paused. Ellie, why would they be looking for you? A tiny wrinkle formed between her eyebrows, memory surfacing through fear. Because they said Daddy kept something. Something only I could unlock. Unlock. Rowan felt the word hit him like a sudden drop in altitude. Before he could ask more, the first retrieval unit entered the terminal. 4 men, not rushing, walking with the chilling confidence of people accustomed to being obeyed. They wore charcoal gray coats, tailored and identical. No logos, no agency badges, just cold professionalism. Their boots barely made a sound. The man in front had a heavy brow ridge, sunken eyes, and a jaw built like reinforced concrete. A faded scar cut across the bridge of his nose. Old, likely shrapnel, the kind that left more psychological damage than physical. His hair was black, slicked back, and he moved with the grounded, fluid gait of a trained operative. His partner was younger, late 20s, tall and narrow-shouldered, with a nervous mouth and a habit of cracking his knuckles as he walked. His brown hair hung slightly too long over his forehead, and his gaze flicked constantly, like a field tech conditioned to scan for threats, but not used to initiating them. Behind them came 2 more, the watchers. One was bald, polished scalp catching the overhead lights. His stare was flat, reptilian, unreadable. The last was a rangy man with sandy hair and hands shoved deep in his pockets, posture too casual to be harmless. Retrieval units Omega and Tau, Adrian muttered. This is bad. Fantastic, Ingrid growled. Names that sound like they came out of a villain training manual. Adrian didn't smile. They're not here for negotiation. The heavy-browed leader, Omega 1, Rowan guessed, stopped abruptly when he saw Ellie in Rowan's arms. His entire posture sharpened. A slow, assessing smile formed, one that never reached his eyes. Found you, he murmured. Ellie buried her face in Rowan's chest, shaking. Ridge snarled, lips pulling back to show the full length of his teeth. Omega 1 raised both hands slowly, palms outward. We're not here to harm the child. We just need the asset. The bear? Rowan asked, voice steady. The asset, Omega 1 repeated, gaze sliding briefly across the bear but locking quickly back onto Ellie. Travis whispered, He means Ellie. No, Ingrid said sharply. Not happening. You move 1 inch and these dogs will. We're not here to fight dogs, Omega 1 said. But we will fight men, if necessary. Rowan stepped backward a single step, Ridge mirroring him instantly. Sentinel 14 tightened as one. Then something strange happened. The youngest retrieval operative, the nervous one, flinched suddenly, his head snapping sideways as if hearing something far away. His breathing quickened, his gaze locked on Ellie and then on the bear. Sir, he muttered, voice cracking. Do you hear that? Hear what? Omega 1 snapped. The signal, the young man whispered. It's louder now. Omega 1 stiffened. There is no audible signal. Yes, there is, the young man insisted, sweat collecting at his hairline. High frequency. It's calling. Calling. Ellie's arms tightened around Rowan's neck. Every dog in Sentinel 14 suddenly lifted their heads at the exact same moment, ears up, bodies frozen, noses twitching. Ridge released a sharp breath. Scout stepped forward. Bear let out a trembling whine. Ghost, the old shepherd, stared at Ellie like she were a beacon glowing in a spectrum only animals could see. A hum filled the air, so faint Rowan wasn't sure if he heard it or felt it. But the dogs felt it unmistakably. Ellie felt it too. She whispered, barely audible, It's Daddy. And then she reached out, not for the bear. Toward the retrieval units? Omega 1's eyes widened for the first time. The child wasn't just connected to the danger. She was connected to the signal. A signal summoning them all. Rowan instinctively pulled her back, but Ellie didn't resist the movement. She simply trembled, a shivering leaf in a storm she didn't understand. Ingrid's voice cracked with urgency. We need to move, now. But Omega-1 stepped forward. Please, do not make this difficult. The child is not the target. That's not what you're signaling, Rowan retorted. We are retrieving what her father took, Omega-1 corrected. She simply has access. Access to what? Ingrid demanded. The younger operative spoke first, not to Ingrid, but to Rowan, voice small and frightened. He hid something in the device. A failsafe. She's imprint-coded to it. Imprint-coded? Travis echoed. Omega-1 shot the younger man a deadly glare. But Rowan understood. You mean it responds to her? The nervous operative nodded, his voice trembling. The signal spikes every time she panics, every time she holds it. You didn't notice? The dogs did. Rowan felt the weight of the bear again. Not just physical. Something deeper. What does the device track? Rowan pressed. Omega-1 hesitated, not out of uncertainty, but out of strategy, measuring how much information to reveal. Then he spoke 3 words that froze the air. Her father's location. Ellie's head jolted upward. Daddy? Omega-1 softened his voice, just slightly. Yes, Ellie. We're trying to bring him home. It was the first moment Rowan saw something almost human flicker in the man's eyes. But Ridge stepped forward, body rigid, a warning growl rising from deep inside. He sensed something off, something wrong. Ridge was rarely mistaken. Ingrid placed her palm against her weapon. Why would the father need tracking? Why hide it in a bear? Omega-1 met her gaze, his face settling into an emotionless mask. Because Nathaniel Cross ran. Rowan stiffened. From what? From us, Omega-1 replied, with information he should never have seen. Ellie's breath hitched. Daddy wouldn't run. Omega-1's expression softened by a degree, like a man who'd spent years making children cry but didn't enjoy it. Ellie, your father didn't mean to drag you into this. Rowan stepped between them. She's not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice, Omega-1 said quietly. Those dogs can't stop what's coming. Ridge barked sharply, as if in furious disagreement. Ghost stepped forward, old bones creaking but presence undeniable. Tank's tail shot upward, stiff like a spear. Nova and Ember moved sideways in perfect formation. Ingrid whispered, awe mixing with terror. They're not defending anymore. They're preparing. For what? Travis asked. For engagement, Rowan said. Omega-1 exhaled. You are outnumbered. Then from the far end of the concourse, heavy boots echoed. Not the 4 men already present. More. Many more. Retrieval units Alpha, Beta, Delta. Adrian Locke's face drained of color. You need to run. Now. Or what? Ingrid asked. Adrian swallowed. Or this airport becomes a war zone. Rowan tightened his hold on Ellie. Ridge pressed against his leg, ready to move. Lights flickered overhead. Dogs growled as one. Footsteps accelerated. And Chapter 6 ends here, in the breath hanging between retreat and battle. With Rowan realizing that if they didn't escape now, none of them would leave Gate 7 alive. The airport lights flickered again, shuddering along the ceiling as if electricity itself felt fear. Rowan tightened his grip on Ellie, the child's trembling breath warm against his collarbone. Ridge pressed against his leg, body coiled with instinct sharper than any blade. Sentinel 14 formed a curved shield around them, 14 silhouettes of muscle, fur, and unbreakable intention. The first wave of retrieval units advanced through the concourse, boots echoing like distant thunder. Omega-1 led the charge, his heavy brow shadowing eyes that calculated distance, risk, and weakness in the blink of an eye. Behind him, Units Alpha and Beta split into two tactical lines, moving with the steely precision of men who lived in the borderland between legality and something far colder. Ingrid lunged forward, planting herself between the advancing operatives and Rowan. Her voice, low and sharp, cut through the tension. Terminal security is on the way. You take one more step and this turns into your worst PR nightmare. Omega-1 didn't even blink. That won't matter. Rowan moved backward toward the service hallway, shifting Ellie in his arm. She clung to him, her small fingers hooked into the fabric of his jacket. "Don't let them take me," she whispered. "Not happening," Rowan murmured, voice steady despite the chaos pulling at his nerves. "Ridge and I have you." The hallway behind them was dim and narrow, lined with service doors and flickering emergency lights. The smell of overheated wiring, disinfectant, and something faintly metallic hung in the air. Adrian Locke limped up beside Rowan, his breath uneven, face pale but determined. "Take the west corridor. It leads to the maintenance docks." "And you?" Rowan asked. Adrian forced a weak smile. "I'll stall them. I'm good at lying. Comes with the job description." Before Rowan could reply, Ingrid grabbed Adrian's collar and yanked him out of harm's path. "No, you're injured. You're coming with us." Adrian blinked, surprised, his usual arrogance crumbling into something that resembled gratitude. Rowan checked the dogs. Nova, Milo, Scout, Front, Tank, Bear, Rear Guard, Ridge with me. They moved. The corridor swallowed them, the sounds of the concourse growing distant but never truly gone. Rowan could hear the retrieval units fanning out, coordinated footsteps closing in. "Left," Adrian pointed. Rowan turned sharply, nearly slipping on the polished concrete floor. The dogs adjusted instantly. Nova darted ahead, tail straight, nose skimming the ground. Milo kept to the left wall. Scout sprinted ahead, ears twitching like radar dishes. Ellie lifted her head just enough to whisper, "The bear is calling again." Rowan froze mid-step. But Ridge felt it first. He stopped so abruptly that Rowan almost stumbled over him. The shepherd's ears shot upright, body rigid, eyes locked on something Rowan couldn't see. And then, Ghost, the old white shepherd, halted as well. Then Ember, then Luna, one by one. 14 dogs, 14 ears, 14 hearts beating as one. The stillness was so complete, it felt like a vacuum pulling the world inward. A soft hum seeped through the hallway, a sound Rowan couldn't hear, but Ellie and the dogs clearly could. Ellie's pupils widened, her breath caught. "Daddy's scared," she whispered. The hum deepened in the dogs. Ridge gave a whine Rowan had only heard once, years ago on a battlefield right before a mortar hit ground. A warning, a plea, a call. The dogs were answering something no human could, and Ellie was the center of it. Before Rowan could respond, Ellie's stuffed bear pulsed faintly, its internal circuitry glowing for a fraction of a second, like a firefly trapped under fur. Rowan's blood ran cold. Something inside the toy wasn't just a tracker. It was alive with purpose, and it was reacting to danger. Ridge barked once, sharp, urgent, the command of a seasoned K-9 leading his own battalion. "Go," Rowan said instantly. They sprinted down the hall. Behind them, a door slammed open, the retrieval units flooding the corridor like a dark tide. Omega-1's voice boomed. "Intercept. Do not let them reach the tarmac." Ingrid turned and fired a warning shot into the wall. Not at a person, just enough to force the operatives to take cover. The echo rattled the metal pipes overhead. The dogs accelerated. Ridge ran at Rowan's side, matching his speed despite the child in his arms. Rex took point position, every muscle stretched to speed. Arrow streaked ahead, fast as his name promised. The corridor opened into a service bay, lit by cold blue overhead lights. Airport maintenance carts sat abandoned. A wide hydraulic door loomed at the far end. Travis rushed to the control panel. "I can open it, but we'll be exposed." "We don't have another option," Rowan said. Travis slammed the switch. The door groaned upward. Cold night air burst in, carrying the smell of jet fuel and distant rain. The runway stretched wide and shadowed under the glow of scattered floodlights. In the distance, engines rumbled. But somewhere out there, the retrieval units would have fewer hiding places. And that was enough. Rowan shot a glance behind him. The retrieval units were closing. Omega-1 stepped forward, raising both hands, not in surrender, but in final warning. The overhead lights cast severe hollows across his face, carving out the ruthless angles of a man worn down by missions nobody talked about. His voice carried across the bay. "She belongs with us." Rowan stepped backward onto the tarmac. "She belongs with her father." Omega-1's expression flickered, briefly, before freezing back into cold resolve. Her father made her a key. Nothing more. Ellie shook her head violently. "No. Daddy loves me." Omega-1 exhaled as though her words wounded him. Something passed through his eyes, regret maybe, or memory, and vanished just as quickly. Ingrid raised her weapon. "Stay where you are." Ridge stepped forward, low growl rumbling deep. Ghost raised his head, old but unbroken. Tank bristled like a living wall. Sentinel-14 formed a semicircle behind Rowan and Ellie, prepared to die for them. Omega-1 didn't advance, but his words did. "You can run," he said, "but the signal doesn't stop, and whoever controls it will come for her again." "And we'll be ready," Rowan replied. He turned, and the dogs turned with him. They ran into the night, toward an uncertain road, toward a missing father, toward a truth hidden inside a child's trembling hands and a bear that arced with signals no living adult could understand. The runway hummed under their feet, and though Rowan couldn't hear it, every dog in Sentinel-14 could. The call was not over, and destiny was still moving. Sometimes the greatest miracles are not thunder or fire falling from the sky, but quiet moments when courage rises in the hearts of ordinary people. Moments when a child is protected, when a man chooses compassion over fear, when loyal animals sense danger long before we do. These moments remind us that God still moves in ways we cannot always see, guiding us, guarding us, and placing the right souls in our path at the exact moment we need them, in our everyday lives. Whether we are rushing through airports, working long hours, or simply trying to hold our families together, there are signs of His presence. A stranger who shows kindness, a friend who arrives just in time, a feeling deep inside urging us to slow down, to look closer, to listen. Sometimes protection comes on 2 legs, sometimes it comes on 4, but behind it all, there is a purpose greater than chance. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to share it with someone who may need a reminder that they are not alone. Leave a comment with your thoughts, subscribe to the channel for more stories of hope, and let your voice become part of a community that believes in goodness, redemption, and divine protection. May God watch over you, your family, and all those you love. May He guide your steps, strengthen your spirit, and surround you with His grace in every moment ahead.